Hey guys, and welcome to another brand new video. In this video, we actually have some pretty interesting news and pretty big deep dives when it comes to the PlayStation 5. Now, as you guys know, the console is getting really close to around 2 years of being out, and it doesn't really feel like that because for me, I have essentially not taken a day off of letting people know when restocks are happening, when stuff is ongoing, and well, just basically living the life of being a non-stop PS5 and Xbox restocker for God knows why. One day, that'll end, but until then, we still have to kind of go and decide on the fact of, is the PlayStation 5 living up to its performance? Is it actually doing as well as we're expecting? And we actually have a very, very interesting article kind of going and doing a deep dive where it kind of goes to show that some people are kind of thinking the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are already starting to get a little bit aged. Now, I do want to say, it doesn't feel like it, but 2 years is kind of a long time, especially in tech. Think about it. A brand new iPhone comes out like every single year. Brand new GPUs pretty much every single year. CPUs all the time. And well, it does kind of make sense. Like tech does kind of get obsolete, especially nowadays, pretty quickly. So let's go and talk about this. Let's go talk about the fact of if the PlayStation 5 is kind of not living up to its, well, basically promises. And let's go just talk about everything else. As well, if any of you guys are brand new, make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on. As well, for the brand new PlayStation 5 giveaway and the $500 giveaway, we have the Twitter and Twitch room down below. We have the Target links down below, Amazon links down below. And I appreciate you guys all so much here for watching here in the first place. So we have this cool article over here from Digital Trends where 2 years later, and I still can't believe it's been 2 years, the PlayStation 5 can never live up to its performance promises. So we have an article over here from Jacob Roach, and I want to do a deep dive myself. So, the seams of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox are starting to go and crack. Over the past week, 2 games, this is a big topic, we may even cover in a separate video, 2 games launched that changed the status quo for performance on current-gen consoles. A Plague Tale Requiem, which is a phenomenal game, although even taxing on my 3080 Ti PC, and Gotham Knights. And both those games, since unlike all the other games, both actually shipped at 30 frames per second, without a performance mode. Now that kind of just goes and highlights, number one, on how kind of probably intensive these games are, and potentially how unoptimized, but also kind of goes to show that sometimes this hardware is actually not fine-tuned and up to scuff enough for these consoles. So in the late 2020, when the Xbox Series X and PS5 debuted, the norm was that players could opt in for a higher resolution at 30 FPS, or sacrifice a bit of visual fidelity for that smooth 60 FPS. Sony never explicitly said that the PS5 would always deliver a smooth 60 FPS, but that has always been the expectation over the past 2 years. Although right now it does seem like things are starting to go and change, especially now with third parties, so basically non-Sony studios. So the next gen might be kind of starting to age a little bit. Now, I still think that the console is going to be good for quite some time. If you literally bought one tomorrow, you're still going to be happy with your PlayStation for a while, especially because we'll still be maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years out from a PS5 Pro. Like, you're not going to be, like, these people specifically make games, like, say, for God of War, for these consoles. We're still using the PS4. Like, you're going to be happy with your PS5 for a while. But it does kind of seem to show that some of these things are kind of hitting, like, the higher level than we're expecting. So with this, although the PS5 and Xbox still feel next-gen, they're not really not. Well, they're currently still current gen, which I wish people at some point, I mean, I'm on a, someone who does that myself, but it is just current gen right now. We're 2 years away from release at this point, and the console's starting to show their age. Under the hood of both the Xbox Series X and PS5 is a semi-custom system on a chip developed by AMD, which was already even at that point a little bit out of date too as well when they released. Both consoles came with the CPU that packs an 8 Zen 2 cores, the same architecture AMD uses for its Ryzen 3000 desktop processors. It's roughly equivalent to a Ryzen 7 3700 desktop CPU minus a hair of clock speed. They both use a custom RDNA2 GPU as well, which is the same architecture AMD used for its RX 6000 graphics cards. The GPU is much more difficult to find an equivalent for, but it's somewhere around an RX 6650 XT as well. So basically, like, you guys can kind of go and tell, and as I mentioned before, tech kind of does go and get kind of obsolete pretty quick. So at launch, the GPU power of these consoles were really competitive with PC, although the CPU is lagging just a little bit. But now next-gen GPUs like the 4090 that just came out, / is like in the process of being released, its release cycle, are challenging that position now, and developers are willing to leverage more demanding features. So think even more hardcore stuff such as like RTX, or trying to go push 4K, even maybe 120 frames on this way higher-end hardware. So if you look at a Plague Tale, Requiem, and Gotham Knights, it's clear to see that neither the PS5 or Xbox actually met their even recommended PC requirements. which are the specs that the devs actually require too as well for 1080, 60, or 4K 60. So it's not one for comparison. Console benefits obviously from more their closed ecosystems. So think like people are making custom games for PlayStation, so God of War, Horizon, or on the Xbox side too, or even just using the Xbox Game Pass, either or. So there is still huge console benefits, cheaper price points, and very, very like general optimization. But it also apparently doesn't help that consoles feel much newer than they actually are. So the PS5, for example, too, as well, was, basically going for $700 for the secondhand market, but you could also kind of see that typically based on, say, maybe a PS4 would be, we'd maybe be expecting maybe a PS5 Pro coming out and announced in the near future or so, but a lot of folks still can't even buy the PS5. And even though the PS5's been outselling, gaming as a whole has been growing, and it just kind of goes to show that everything is just weird. Like right now, the PS5 is still good. It's a good console. I play on my PS5. I play Call of Duty, and it looked beautiful on my PS5 on good frame rates. So it's not the end of the world, but it does kind of show that some of the stuff is getting a little bit more, overdone at this point. But a lot of these big game developers know on how many people are on PC, how many people are trying to go push on these next-gen consoles, or is even mobile gaming, so they don't really want to be consistently held back when it comes to all this stuff. But as well, a big thing is also on the upscaling. So the secret behind the best performance in games is upscaling. So consoles have done it for years, and they will continue to do it. And even obscenely powerful GPUs like the RTX 4090 benefit from upscaling features like deep learning super sampling. Unfortunately, though, features like DLSS and Intel's XeSS aren't even available to consoles. So it kind of adds a little bit more on the obsolete side where it's like their specs they're good. They're still good. They're worth buying. They're worth getting. I'm gonna still be happy with my PS5. But some of these bigger things, like compared to a 4090, it's just like night and day. So instead, most consoles are using some in-house form of upscaling or opting for a feature like Unreal Engine's temporal super resolution. AMD's Fidelity FX are also available too as well on the Xbox Series X. And these upscaling features are cool, but they're also not free. So looking at FSR 2.0, for example, AMD recommends an RX 5700 or the RX 6700 or higher GPU to upscale a 4K. So these upscaling tools render the game at a lower resolution, but you're not getting the same performance as just running the game at a lower resolution. There is some overhead. So basically using Uncharted, for example, they saw a 62.6 FPS average with FSR 2.0's quality mode, rendering at 1440p and upscaling to 4K, but then at native 1440p, they saw 79.2 FPS as well. So you guys can kind of go and see like even some of the recommendations in terms of their specs and pushing all these different internal things, even HDRs, etc. Some of the consoles may just not be up to scuff, especially maybe in 2, 3, 4 years from now. Now, that is still kind of like a while away at the end of the day, but it's still something to know. So that overhead's basically important as they push for this, considering that the thin performance margins consoles operate on. So you have to like almost make the game for console as well, even if you're making it for PC. So it's harder to port over, etc. So at 4K, a Plague Tale Requiem, for example, basically the same card that we just referenced, like the RX 6700, can't even manage 30 FPS too as well, and that's even a better GPU than what consoles have. So upscaling can actually help push that frame rate up into the higher 40s, but developers need to make a tough call on having a bad experience with more various frame rates, or locking it at 30 where the game is smooth. And it is kind of a hard call, and it does kind of show that the PS5 and Xbox are getting a little bit on the obsolete side. Now, the Plague Tale game was very big. Like, there's thousands of rats, if you guys haven't played the game, thousands of rats everywhere that you basically have to keep on constantly rendering. It's a hard game to run, so you guys can kind of see how crazy this even looks like. So it kind of makes sense, too. Even my PC was having issues with it. So upscaling doesn't help if you have a CPU bottleneck, too, as well. Although most games are limited by the GPU, some of the things like the massive fat rat hordes that I just mentioned to can also hit the CPU hard. And CPUs don't usually represent a big increase in gaming performance, so that's why Sony and Microsoft went with the less powerful Zen 2 architecture. But as well, even the recent Generation 3 and 4 have offered huge improvements as well. And it kind of just goes to show. So with all this kind of goes and shows that the consoles are good at launch. Like the past 2 years has been great, and it still is good, in my honest opinion. I just think at this point it kind of makes everything a little bit harder because I lost my camera. That's probably why it's a little harder, as you can see it. But anyway, as we wind down this video over here, the big thing is that we look at these consoles and they should be like consistent. They should be huge. They should be fine. And I still think a lot of the first party games like God of War or Forspoken will be custom made to make sure it works and it's nice. But we can maybe have to run into some issues on these third-party games, such as Gotham Knights or Plague Tale, as we just even referenced, and it kind of maybe goes to show that these consoles are not necessarily dated as of yet, but they might be getting closer to being dated than we all expect. and we also might be closer than to a PS5 Pro or Xbox Series X Pro, then we also could go and expect to as well. So I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you guys kind of think that these games are kind of getting, these games are too hardcore? Do you guys care about the frames? Are you just happy with consistency? Are you still going to buy a PlayStation 5 no matter what? I would love to hear your thoughts and comments down below. As well, if any of you guys are brand new, make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on. As well, for the brand new PlayStation 5 giveaway, Amazon links down below, Target links down below, and I appreciate you guys all so much for watching here in the first place.